What's up, family? Thank you for tuning in to the DreamNation podcast. My name is Casanova. I'll be your host, and I'm excited to be bringing to you entrepreneurs, thought leaders, and trailblazers from around the world. Stay locked in with us because we're about to go on a journey that will change your life. Hey, Dream Builder. This episode is powered by Design Crowd. Design Crowd is a website that helps entrepreneurs, startups, and small businesses get creative and quality designs, from custom logos to business cards and even web designs. There's a community of over 900,000 designers from all across the world that's ready to bring your idea to life in as little as hours. So head on over to designcrowd.com/DreamNation and see what all the hype is about. What's up, Dream Builder? We are back again with another episode, and I'm excited to be bringing to you today a mastermind when it comes to marketing. This is somebody that I've been studying and listening to for a couple years now, and so it's super dope to have him on the show. Please help me in welcoming Eric Sue to the show. Eric, you want to go ahead and say what's up to Dream Nation?
Hello, Dream Nation, Casanova. Thanks so much for having me. Excited to be here.
Cool. Now, one thing that I like to do when we start out the show is I always love to make sure we give the proper introductions. And the way that I do that is I compare us as entrepreneurs and thought leaders, change makers, to superheroes. And the reason being is because we're constantly flying around the world. We're putting on our cape and we're trying to solve some of the world's biggest problems. So what we all know is behind every Superman, there's that S on the chest, and there's that guy named Clark Kent. And a lot of the times we can at least articulate who Clark Kent is because we've seen him come out of the dark sometimes. But what we don't know is behind the S on the chest, and the superhero known as Eric Sue. Tell me, who is that Clark Kent? Like, where do you come from? Who's that guy behind the man that we all know today?
Yeah, I think, by the way, my favorite superhero is Batman. He's a very, he's different than all of them, right? But I think for me, I've always kind of struggled with school growing up because it wasn't interesting to me, right? And so what was interesting to me growing up was games. So I played a lot of games. I was a Blizzard kid, a lot of StarCraft, Diablo, a lot of first-person shooters, Counter-Strike, all these games, right? World of Warcraft and all that. So I spent a lot of time doing that. While, I had my friends and family basically saying this is a waste of time. My friends would get in, or my parents would take away my keyboard, my mouse. There'd be this big struggle while the only thing I was at the top of my game at was games, right? That's where I had camaraderie. That's where I had teams. And that's where I learned a lot of these habits that I have now: resilience, teamwork, communication, that type of stuff. And so through that, I built confidence. And I always thought to myself, look, if I can find something in life that captures the same feeling, I'm going to be good, right? I just got lucky enough that happened to be business. So I basically, struggled throughout school. I almost got kicked out of high school. I almost got kicked out of college. I got fired from 2 jobs, right? It's just, I eventually stumbled into entrepreneurship, and, a lot of people are accidental entrepreneurs. And, I just kind of carried over. Once I got into it, I'm like, oh, this is just like playing a game, and it's not that bad at all. And gaming has prepared me for this. Just like sports prepares you for a lot of, real life, gaming does the same thing. So.
Got it. Cool. Now talk to me about, you said you stumbled into entrepreneurship. What was like that first business that you created, and how did you know, like, I'm kind of good at this thing?
Yeah, you know what? I mean, I remember I was working at a company, and I was working at this e-commerce place called 4 Wheel Parts. They sell like, Jeep stuff and truck stuff online. And one of my coworkers had an e-commerce store that sold magic stuff. And I had no idea what magic stuff was. I was just like, I want a piece of it, right? And so I was 23 years old at the time, and I took, I think all the money I had was $4,000. So I paid the $4,000 to him. I bought the website, and I promptly tanked the whole thing. I partnered with the wrong people. I didn't vet my partners. And then we tried to re-platform from a Yahoo store to Magento. Like, we went from like 0 to 100, and we didn't even need to do that. So I really very much stumbled into it because it was like a gut reaction. And that's very much how I stumbled into eventually taking over the ad agency I own, which is Single Grain, which eventually stumbled into all this other stuff, right? So yeah, I like to say I kind of just accidentally fall into stuff. And instead of planning out 10 to 20 years, sometimes you just kind of have to let things happen to you.
Got it. So talk to me about when you said that you didn't vet the right partners and things like that. So when you took over this, you originally had partners, or you went and found the partners, but then you figured out that those weren't the people that you should have been partnering with? Or did you guys all buy this business together?
Yeah, I think we all put it. Yeah, I think that's what it was. We all put in 4 grand each, and one guy was the guy that I learned internet marketing from. Happened to be 4 years younger than me. And then another guy was one of his friends who I didn't vet at all, but he said he trusted him. So we didn't think about roles and responsibilities. We didn't think about what we've done before. We didn't think about the vision and all that, right? So we kind of just said, hey, let's try it. And what ended up happening was one of the partners ended up having a drug addiction problem. So that didn't work out. And the other one was just working on too many things. And then I was just not that interested in it. So we all had fault there.
Hmm. Wow, that's very powerful because you said that like we didn't think about roles and responsibilities. And a lot of times we're just thinking about the end in mind and we're like, oh man, this thing can profit. But we don't think about that there's a lot of infrastructure that needs to be had because we can lose this business just as fast as we acquired it. So
Yeah, I
that's very
think
powerful.
when you're younger, you think too much, you over optimize for money, right? And then I think a lot of problems in the world of internet marketing is those people are and I'm one of those people, by the way. I used to optimize too much for money. But then when you realize, when you read a lot of these books and you learn from the people that have built amazing companies, let's say the late Tony Hsieh from Zappos as an example, he talks about culture, he talks about vision. And so when you have culture and you have, a big long-term vision, you can actually scale, and the possibilities are endless, right? And the game that you're playing, you're not trying to play with an end in mind. You're just going to keep playing till the end, until you pass away. But while you do it, you're going to enjoy the journey, right? It's not just, I'm going to try to make, $2 or $3 million a year, and then I'm going to buy a Lambo or something. That's very short-sighted in my opinion.
Yeah, for sure. So talk to me about how did you wind up connecting with Neil Patel? Right? Was it you both were just early in your journey and so it just felt like it was the right synergy or did you seek him out as a partner? Or what did that look like?
Yeah, I mean, this is so when I was learning digital marketing stuff, his blog kept popping up, Quick Sprout, which he has now handed off to somebody else. But I would read. Sometimes he would just make up words like phrases, and so I read something called. He talked about something called link blending, and I remember the phrase. And so I just started emailing. I was like, "What do you mean by this exactly?" And then he responded to me very quickly. And then I was like, oh, he responds. And so then I just kept hitting him up, hitting him up. Finally, he just got annoyed and he was like, dude, let's just talk on the phone. I'm like, usually when you get annoyed, you just start ghosting someone, but he like took it further for whatever reason. And we got on the Eventually, we ended up meeting at a Taco Bell, which was his favorite restaurant at the time. He doesn't eat that stuff anymore, but like at the time it was great. And we he was more of a, I learned a lot from him in the beginning, right? And eventually it got to a point where we just kept trading ideas, and we became more as kind of peers and partners, right? Which is why we have the marketing school podcast in addition to all the other stuff we do around that. So that's how we met. But what I'll say is this, right? I think those that know who Neil is, he's big in the digital marketing world. You have to also understand, for me, one of the things I learned is you don't want to compare your journey to someone else's, because in the business world, he's a good 14 years ahead of me, or something like that, right? You want to like that. He has his journey. You have your own journey. You're better off trying to make yourself 1% better every single day.
Got it. No, I love that. And the reason why I think that that's very relevant to ask the question about that, and I love that you shared the story, is a lot of people are going out and they're looking for mentors right now. And essentially, you say he's 14 years and you're already seeing his blog. Did you set out with the intention that you wanted him as a mentor, or you wanted to partner up with him in some way? Or was it really just like, I just had this genuine curiosity, and if I never would have got a response from him, I was going to be okay? Because a lot of people, they'll reach out to mentors or reach out to somebody who's ahead of them, and then they won't get a response, and that can become very discouraging.
Yeah, I mean, I think you hit the nail on the head there. What you're aiming for is you're aiming for curiosity, and so um, the if he didn't respond, I would go to somebody else and I would just keep asking questions, right? So I think it's and by the way, this ties back to gaming again. It's having that beginner's mindset and thinking like a child, because when you think like a child, you don't think you're better than people. You're always trying to learn and you're always trying to get better. And it's the same thing with my first podcast, Leveling Up. After the first year, I was only getting 9 downloads a day. And after the second year, I was only getting 30 downloads a day, and I was spending 6 hours a week on it. So anybody would have said, hey, you should probably give up on it. But for me, I was optimizing for learning, right? And to your point, curiosity. So I got to learn from free from these amazing people. And that to me, eventually you just keep going and keep going and keep going. And then someone's going to pay attention. And then boom, that podcast now does a lot better. And it's led to the Marketing School podcast. And collectively, I think we're over 50 million downloads so far, which is not bad, right? It's not like we're Tim Ferriss or anything, but it's not bad.
Wow. So talk to me about what you've learned in the world of podcasting, because like you guys have, again, one of the top podcasts. I know it's one that I'm subscribed to, and I'm not subscribed to very many. So how long have you had this podcast, and why did you guys set out originally for it to be a podcast, or you just wanted to release it as like something that was more for your tribe? Talk to me about what did that look like when you set out with the intention in the beginning?
Great question. And there was no intention in the beginning. It was very much we stumbled into it. The story is Neil and I were walking in Hollywood, and I think we went to get juice or something. So I remember this. And I was just talking about how great podcasting has been for me. And he just turns to me and he says, "Okay, let's do it." And I was like, "What are you talking about?" He's like, "Let's do a podcast." And that was not what I said. And so eventually we just kept going down with the idea. He's like, "Oh yeah, we should name it B School." I was like, "Someone's already doing B School. We should call it Marketing School." So it was very much a collaboration from the very beginning. And I remember we were recording in Vegas. We had, our gear we had a Blue Yeti microphone, USB plug-in, and we had to turn off the AC because it was too loud, right? And then in Vegas was too hot. So anyway, that's how we got started. We've been doing that one for about 4 years. And we stay consistent with that. I'm happy to talk about tactical stuff around podcasting, but I will say without sticking with my first one, it wouldn't have led to this one. So.
Got it. And yeah, I think that it's relevant because a lot of people are right now that are listening at this or even watching it, they have some type of interest in podcasts. And a lot of people have their own message, but they struggle with one, what should be the topic? Two, when should they monetize? So I think those tactical things are, and obviously there's many of other things, but for you guys, when you first looked at it and you were saying, hey, maybe we're going to name it B School. And I'd imagine the B was for business, like the business school, everything you've both learned in business. So talk to me about what are some of the things that you've learned through podcasting. And on the tactical side, I do want to get into how exactly do you start to grow your listenership? Because that's another thing that some people are like, how do I have timeless growth strategies? How do I start to market myself even better? So
right.
For that question, first off is, what was some strategies that you guys used? Well, first, I guess let's talk about, did you have the intention of monetizing because you called it a business school? Did you feel like you were going to monetize this or no?
There was no intention in the beginning to monetize, and we actually didn't monetize for 2.5, 3 years or so. And so imagine we were spending a lot of time in LA. We both go to a podcast studio and we record. So we were spending money on hosting and we were spending money on recording and all that. But we had the long-term in mind. And eventually what happened is we had a deal fall into our lap with, an advertiser, DreamHost, which is great. And what happened was after that, we're like, oh, by the way, I've been in, other peer groups, EO, YPO, and peer groups are helpful. Let's do our own peer group. So we started a peer group and then, the pandemic hit, but that will come back. And then we started doing all this other stuff around it. But the key thing, what we learned was, and I was talking about this yesterday with a couple of buddies on Clubhouse, focusing on creating a great audience, focusing on creating a great community first, then you can do whatever you want afterwards, because your ultimate goal is to just serve the community. So that's what we did.
Got it. So yeah, no. So that's so interesting that you say that. You said we were paying money to be able to basically produce our own show, and then we stumbled upon this advertiser. So talk to me about like what led to that advertiser feeling like that they wanted to do business with you guys in DreamHost.
I think this one is, I'm trying to think about how to duplicate this for people. Okay, I mean, obviously you want to build a great audience, so you build fans first, right? So one of the things is the person working at DreamHost, he happened to be a big fan and listen to the podcast. The other thing is we got lucky because the Single Grain blog, my website, caught his email address and then automatically reached out to him. So we use a couple of different softwares for that. We use a customer data platform combined with a sales enablement tool called Outreach. And we just caught him at the right time. And then a conversation started. And then that's how we got the deal done. So that part is more fortuitous. But I would say the thing that's duplicable is actually staying consistent, creating something people want to come back to. And that's what we did for him. And that's what built up the goodwill. And what I will say is, when you have a podcast that and you have listeners that have stuck around for a while, what I found is the sales cycle is usually a lot shorter and the retention for that client is usually a lot longer. They stay for years and years and they close a lot faster. So
I love it. I love it. Now, for you guys, I think one of the distinctions of what you had is your episodes are all like under 10 minutes long, right? Or at least definitely under 15 minutes long. Was that something that was intentional in the beginning of this is how you're going to distinguish yourself in the marketplace?
yeah, part of it was again stumbling into it, but because everyone was doing an interview podcast, so Leveling Up was an interview podcast, and we're like, okay, how can we zag where other people are zigging, right? How can we go in a different direction? So we're like, okay, everyone's doing an interview. We're not going to do an interview style thing. It's just going to be me and him initially. And then we are going to do it daily and we're going to keep it short. And what ended up happening was we just kind of fell into a process where we started with throwing in a couple ideas. And then what would happen now, the process very much so is my team will come up with ideas. We'll drop it into a Google Sheet and then we'll edit as we go. And then usually we'll record for like an hour to 2 hours. And then it's probably 3 to 4 hours of work per month.
Got it. Got it. So what were some of the struggles? Because we're talking about a lot of, when you first started, what were some of the struggles? Did you guys hit the gate right away with marketing school? Did you guys start out right away and you built a pretty big audience? Or was that something that you thought that maybe you had Neil Patel and since his blog was doing well, you thought the podcast would do well and then it kind of died out? What did that look like in its especially first 1 or 2 years?
Yeah, I would say for this one, because we both at that time when we started, we already had built-in audiences and he already had a really big email list. So I would say this is hard to duplicate because we started and we led with the email list a couple of times. We didn't hit it too aggressively. Maybe in the first month or two, we hit it a couple of times, but that immediately led to in the first month, it was like 100,000 downloads. And then the second month was like 300 and the next month was 500,000. So I don't think a lot of people can repeat that. If you do happen to have an audience already, that's great. But I think what I found over the years is, consistency helps and then naturally you'll build an audience, right? I think it just a lot of people tend to give up too quickly. Keep in mind, I went for 2 years without anything. So
Got it. Now, we've talked about timeless growth strategies, and a lot of people listen at this and they're like, okay, I just got to be consistent. But at the same time, I can be consistently doing something that's taking me into the wrong direction, right? So my question to you is, what were some of the hacks that you had? Like, did you, besides just putting it out there, because I'm sure there's some people out there that have been posting on Anchor for, 3-4 years now, but yeah, they're still not seeing any traction or any growth. What would be some hacks that you like that should they be looking at? Hey, I got to develop on TikTok because it's new, or Clubhouse.
yeah.
We know that that's the thing right now that everybody's on, myself included. Where are those places that I can go to try to build my audience?
So the ones you named are perfect, right? So Clubhouse is one where, I was just looking at a title yesterday. I was like, and I joined the room. There's 1,700 people in the room. I'm listening to the conversation. I was like, man, this sucks. Because I did one with my friends yesterday and it was like, we were talking like, it was just, we didn't title the room really well, but I'm just like, man, we can do way better than that. So I'm looking at Clubhouse right now. Someone, I don't know if you know this author, Shaka, but guy goes from what, 20,000, he has 20,000 followers on Twitter. He starts on Clubhouse. He's got 100,000 followers now, right? So I think audio is here to stay. And plus, Twitter just came out with Spaces and it looks exactly like Clubhouse. So, and then you got Spotify investing all this into podcasting. So I think taking a look at those, giving it a shot, I think that's great, putting your voice out there. What I would say is this: if you're starting out, this is more of like a long-term brain hack. It's what you're looking for is the unsolicited response rate. So maybe every month or so, someone will write a review saying, I don't know how this doesn't get more downloads. This is amazing. So then you have something. Then the other thing you want to pair it with is, are you actually getting better? Are you learning? Because that's how you want to look at it, right? Like, what am I getting from this? Because if you keep it going, it's eventually going to snowball and compound. Like, this is slower growth. This is slow, boring growth. But, you live in Omaha. You know who Warren Buffett is. He didn't become super rich until like 50 million, 50 years old or so, right? But he was rich, but he wasn't like mega rich until that time. So I think you have to look at it that way. But if you want to hack, we talk a lot about going omni-channel. We talk a lot about repurposing. There's repurpose.io, there's repurpose house, whatever you want to call it. But what we do is we have this recorded on video right now, and I'm sure you do this already. In fact, you do. We will take the 60-minute interview and we'll chop it up, throw it on IGTV, throw it on, maybe even throw it up on TikTok, just repurpose, right? Because one piece of content, and this comes from Gary Vee, can become 64 pieces of content, right? It can become 83 pieces. Because what you're aiming to do is you're aiming to maximize reach, whether it's through your podcast or social. That's what you're trying to do. This is like what we're doing right now, Cass, is basically, we're doing email nurturing, right? But we're seeing each other's face and you're hearing my voice. So
I love that perspective. We're doing email nurture. No, that's so big. Now, what opportunities do you feel like because you have a podcast, this has opened it up for you on stages that maybe you would not have gotten on if you didn't have a podcast and build your authority and leadership? What has that done for you? Can you think of one time that you're like, wow, I'm so glad I did that and stay consistent?
Probably the biggest thing is one of my best buddies now, he first started listening to the Leveling Up podcast. Then he invited me to speak at his conference, and then we became buddies. And now we'll do things, we'll travel, we'll work on things together. And it's been a really good friendship. And then his company they're about to go public, right? So it's a very serious it's a very serious relationship. It is a serious relationship. It's a good friendship, right? So that's a really good example. And then I would just say, me, when I'm walking around at conferences, because I used to speak at a lot of software conferences, people would point at me. Oh, whether it's by name or one time a guy was like, podcast guy, right? What ended up happening is now we ended up signing a deal with them. We've been working with them for 4 years. They paid us well over 7 figures. And that's been a good relationship. So,
hey, Dream Builder, if you're anything like me, you have no idea how to come up with a quality logo or even a creative design. You know that quality is important, but it's not always the easiest to nail down, right? That's where Design Crowd comes in. Whether it's a logo, a website, book cover, or even a social media ad, they have a community of over 900,000 professional designers around the world ready to help solve your creative problem. Head on over to designcrowd.com/DreamNation to learn more. And just for being a part of the DreamNation tribe, you're going to receive a special VIP offer when you sign up of up to $150 credit. Now, instead of waiting weeks for an agency to pitch you an idea, you'll be able to get a design of exactly what you need within just 3 days. So again, head on over to designcrowd.com/DreamNation and check it out. Got it, man. I love it. I love to hear it. So talk to me. You've now, is this going to be your first book or have you written a book before?
Yeah, no, this is very much my first book.
Right. And the name of the book is going to be?
It's going to be called Leveling Up.
Leveling Up. Now, the reason why I think that this is very important is right before this, we were talking about how in the gaming world, right, there's a bad stigma against it, right? And so my question to you around this is, when you grew up, did you ever feel like, in a sense, you were a little bit of an alien? Or did you feel like you didn't fit in a lot of spaces? Or like what led you to now write this book?
Yeah. So the first question, I did feel like I didn't fit in. And it's funny. Some of my high school friends would be like, you were so weird before. I'm like, I'm the same person. But what I got lucky with at the time, because most of my school was Asian, people took gaming really seriously. So I actually fit in because I excelled at it. So I was accepted in a way, right? But I did feel like an outcast to certain groups of people. But I always managed to kind of, finesse my way into these things, right? Where like somehow I'm just there. And so why am I doing the book? And I actually got this question from a guy named Anthony Pompliano. I was on his podcast and he's like, why are you doing a book? Like, as if like nobody reads books anymore, right? I think the key thing here is I read a lot of books, right? So I'm looking for people that are similar to me, people that want to learn, people that are curious. I read physical books because if I'm reading on like a Kindle or like an iPad, I'm going to start doing other stuff. I need to focus. I need to just have one book in front of me. And so I think if you have a really good book and you have a really good message, it scales really well. And I'm just looking at it this way. If we talk about building audience first, because I think, you have 4 forms of leverage. You have code, capital, and you have labor, and you have media, right? A lot of people aren't thinking too much about media. Okay, I've got this message. I came from a gaming background. Gaming's taking off right now. I have the intersection between gaming and business. I have a message. Okay, let's do it. So if it takes off, great. I think it's a great long-term book. The messaging is just basically, having the right habits, the right power-ups, and then reframing life into a game, and just things become so much easier because the way I look at it every day, and I'm sure you look at it this way too, is I'm just having fun.
Right.
Like I don't, there's tough moments for sure, but it's just like, it's just part of the journey. And like, I enjoy it. And it's the same feeling I had when I was playing games growing up.
Got it. I love it. Now talk to me about balance, because there's in the world of gaming, right? It can be something that a lot of people struggle with it. One is because it's the unknown, just like you said, like it's still a new concept, esports gaming, right? And parents, when their kids are having so much fun or so much enjoyment out of Fortnite or Call of Duty or whatever else the game might be, that's a struggle because they didn't come from that world. And it's funny because I've had many conversations, because before e-gaming or esports became really cool, I remember back then I was trying to be a professional gamer, and this was around Gears of War, right?
Yeah.
When Gears of War first came out. And so we were heavy into that, and then Call of Duty became the thing, and obviously Halo was always still there. But anyway, I think that one, it was the people didn't understand it, but two, it felt like that there was not a balance. So for you, what do you say to people that say, you know, I struggle with allowing my kids or even myself getting in heavy into gaming because I don't know that I could balance it?
Yeah. I think it's a fair comment, but I think we have to reframe our mindset into thinking we accept sports. Why do we accept sports? Right? There's an analogy there where if you played football or like baseball or basketball in high school, why do your parents let you play? Did you play sports?
I did, yeah. Basketball,
Yeah.
football, track, yeah, dance squad. I was, yeah, and I'm still heavy in the sports.
Yeah. So why do you think your parents let you play all that stuff?
Because it was the norm and it was the way out, to be honest. So for me, growing up inner city Chicago, never having anything, right? It was kind of looked at as a way out. And on top of that, if your kid was good, if you had any type of talent, it gave you status.
Yeah. So that's one thing, right? What did you learn from sports?
For me, I learned collaboration. I loved how to, overcome adversity, because
Yeah.
there was going to be times where you were losing in basketball games. There was going to be times where you got hurt, but it was mind over matter. There was going to be times where you needed leadership to be able to step up, right? And cheer on your team, even though you weren't in the game at that moment. So I learned a lot from sports for sure.
And that's the same thing, right? I think it's everything you said there was beautiful. And when you think about it, sports became popular because the attention was there. And when attention goes somewhere, it starts to get monetized, right? Esports, same thing's happening around. It's rising so quickly. Attention's going there. You have these gamers making like $1 million a month or even more than that. And
There's gamers making $1 million a month.
Yeah, totally. You go to YouTube and there's these people that have like millions of subscribers and they're just crushing it, right? And so look, if you think about it, now gaming has status, right? You can become a celebrity doing it. So everyone's like, oh, I want to become a gamer, right? But we don't want to be doing it for status reasons, right? But that is one reason. Now, the other thing is all the stuff you said, resilience, communication, collaboration, all that stuff, you get the same type of effect. Now, I would just say the same thing to these parents. Like, look, it's just an alternate way to get the same benefits from sports, right? Obviously, you still need to know to, go and train and work out and stuff. But if they want to play games and, give them the time to do it, don't let them go overboard, right? You're going to limit it just like you limit sports. You can't play sports 8 hours a day or 12 hours a day. There's got to be, like, to your point, a little bit of balance there, right? Otherwise, if you skew too much in one direction, you might become overweight and unhealthy. And if you don't have your health, you have nothing. So.
Yeah, no, I think that's a good point. I knew that there was gamers that make, $2, $3, $4 million. To think that, because it's so funny. I just told CJ, because I got a son, 9-year-old boy, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he's very good at basketball. He actually plays up in basketball, but he's heavy into gaming, right? And I'm not one of those people that's against gaming by any means, because I know what it was like. But I do think that there needs to be some type of a balance. And so it's funny because yesterday I had saw somebody in the NBA just got a contract for, like, I think I'm a huge Duke fan in basketball. My whole family is. We're huge diehard Duke fans. And anyway, so Luke Kennard just got a contract with the Clippers for 4 years, $72 million. And I was like, wow. And I was like, CJ, I get it. But I was like, Fortnite is not about to give you 4 years, $72 million.
Well, you don't know. You got to look at it now, right? They're like, especially in like the Asian countries, they're like superstars there. So I think it will start to match, probably not in the next like 5 to 10 years, but eventually we'll get there. So maybe it's not.
I think they're giving 4 years, $72 million in esports.
Yeah, I think it'll get to that point.
Wow. Maybe I might need to pick back up that controller.
Because look, basketball has been around for a while, right? And like 20 years ago, they didn't have max like salaries like this, right? Or I don't even think the 72 million is guaranteed. The problem is, if you look at it, if they're making that much, the advertisers are making way more. So it's
Right.
just a game of attention.
Right. No, facts. I mean, and yeah, just like you said, I mean, attention is the new currency. That's what, right? It's relationships and attention.
Yep.
Those two things are never going anywhere. Where the eyeballs go, right? That's why Clubhouse is so big and
Yep.
everybody's trying to then invest in it and everything else. So figuring out ways that you can grab more attention and you can build relationships, because when attention comes, as much of the people that you can capture into your tribe or into your ecosystem, right? Those are the people who you'll be able to monetize off of, and not saying monetizing your audience, but monetizing with the advertisers, like you were saying, right? The big name brands that they need to be able to invest their money somewhere and get more attention for their business. And so that's what they'll do. So I love that you brought that up. I'm gonna have to think about it a little bit heavier. And I mean, I know that it is getting bigger, but I think that there is always that stigma. And I think it's the media fuels so much of this, because it's like, hey, if you have technology in front of your face too much, like more than 5 hours a day, it could cause you, mental problems or whatever else. And I think people get really scared off of
But
that.
by the way, I think you have to, like, if your son's good at gaming, like if I look at, my transition, it's, are you able to translate those skills into real life, right? Because the problem is, if you get stuck in the gaming world, there's only so much more upside you have, right? And oftentimes, if you're playing like first person shooter, it's all about you, right? You might be playing with the team or whatever, but if you want to capture the most upside, business is the ultimate game. Like, there's nothing close to that, right? And you're helping the world, and now you're just taking what you're doing and you're actually making an impact on the broader economy. So
No, I think that's solid. That's very, very true. Very, very solid information. And so I think that hopefully this can open the eyes for anybody who's listening right now that has kids, or even if they're thinking, maybe this could be your pivot. Maybe, because a lot of people are pivoting and they're trying to figure out how they can write this ebook or how they can do so many other things. But you might be able to pivot to your passion, which can also create a profit off of getting into gaming, especially if you're willing to put the work in and you're willing to stay consistent with it. Right. I think that that's a very, very key
that's a
thing.
good phrase. Pivot to your passion. There you go.
Right. I know. Right. I'm just coming up with all these bars out here.
Yeah.
No. So, man, this has been really a dope conversation. I love the fact that you brought up the podcasting thing, though, because I've been getting do you get a lot of people that inquire about wanting to start a podcast, but they just don't know where to start?
Yep, for sure.
Got it. So for you, are you somebody that now, even looking at it and knowing how wise that you are about the podcasting space, are you still going to tell people that you just got to stay consistent and you got to wait it out for 2 years? Or do you think that there's a faster way? If somebody says, hey, I got a good voice for radio and I want to start a podcast, but I'll be honest, I can't afford to go broke and I can't afford to do this for 2 years.
Yeah.
Do you think that there's ways that people can start to monetize a lot sooner?
Yeah. I mean, I don't know about monetize, but in terms of building an audience, I think, let's say I'm starting out, I would say, because I'm actually about to start a third podcast now, and this is going to be with Yelp, and I'm going to be working with the Michelin star restaurateur, and it's going to be a restaurant podcast. And so, that's a collaboration, right? Because that's leveraging the power of Yelp's audience. And that's also leveraging the power of, a guy that's been there, done that. And I'm just layering on my marketing expertise and I don't need to do a lot of work. So are you able to collaborate with someone and bring them the value, right? So using marketing school as an example, that was very much a collaboration with Neil and I had to use my staff. I had to put together, all basically the plan and everything. And Neil just shows up and records, right? So all the heavy lifting is done by my team. So that actually balances things out. So when we did the event, as an example, live events, all that planning, the vision is really around my team and they're putting things together. And Neil's he's plugging in and he's also adding a lot of value too, but it's a lot less lift from his side, right? Because he's got a lot of stuff going on. So you got to think about, if you're going to collaborate with someone, how do you balance out the value? So
I think that's a hack right there. That's a really big hack that a lot of people do not think about. Like, what can you do to partner with somebody who already has an audience, and what value can you bring? And we talk about this all the time in the world of real estate, right? You might not have the credit, you might not have the capital, but can you do the hands-on work? Can you manage the contractors, things like that? So that's really big. I love that. And maybe, hopefully, that gives somebody some ideas. Now, as far as approaching a big brand like that, do you feel like you have to already have something like a marketing school, or like, how do you approach a big brand like that? Because you've seen it on both sides.
Yeah. So, I mean, with marketing school, I developed a long-term relationship, a long-term friendship. And honestly, when I'll say from like an SEO perspective, because I have a background in SEO, It's a lot harder to get links when you don't know anybody, because links help you grow your traffic, content helps you grow your traffic, whatever. But now it's a lot easier because my team just reaches out and we do a lot of content collaborations with people, and it's a lot easier for us to acquire links, right?
Explain for somebody who's not familiar. Explain what links do and why they're relevant.
Yeah. So the two things that matter the most when it comes to SEO are content. So you got to have content on your website, right? The search engine spiders will crawl it. You got to have links too, because and links are just like the little hypertext, click here or whatever. That those are helpful because it tells the search engine, Google in this case, hey, there's this site is valid, because you're basically giving a vote of confidence whenever you're getting a link, right? So the more links a website has in general, I'm generalizing here, from more reputable website, let's say like a wikipedia.com or like a New York Times or something, the more it's going to be easier for you to rank for keywords when you're writing stuff, right? So for example, our blog on Single Grain, whenever we write about marketing stuff, we tend to rank better because Google sees us as an authoritative marketing site, right? So the more links you get, the better. But the problem is most people suck at SEO because they can get the content stuff down, but actually going out there and asking for links and building links, that's the hard part, because it's like doing sales, but the result you're getting is a link, not actual revenue. So
so you're going out to people who already have the websites, the domain authority, and you're saying, hey, how can I get a link from your website? Is that what you're saying? Can I get a link back to my website from your website?
That's the most basic level, right? We basically call that link begging. But the way we do it now, because we've built relationships, right? Whether it's me and you being friends, or maybe me building relationships at scale with the podcast, we could just reach out to someone and say, hey, do you want to do a content collaboration, right? Because now we have a good blog, we can probably do some type of collaboration where they write content on our site, we write content on their site, and basically, hopefully we can also link out to stuff that we want to link out to.
Wow, I love that. No, man, this has been, again, phenomenal. You've dropped so many jewels. I guess one last question, or a couple last questions that I have for you. The first one being, knowing where you are now, right? You're so much wiser than where you first started. And obviously that's why now you're writing a book and you're sharing your experiences with so many other people. But if you could look back and knowing your journey, if there was one thing that you wished you would have changed, or you wish that you would have implemented sooner to be able to accelerate your journey and your process to your dream, what would that one thing be?
Yeah. If it were one thing I would adjust to the process, I think it's just hire great people faster. I think probably an easier way to think about it is not how to do things, but who do you need to hire? You should constantly be thinking who, and pay top dollar if you need to, because it's worth it.
I love that. Man, there's so many people that have been an influence on my journey, right? That's been a part of my team, both indirectly and directly. So I love that, focusing on the who. I mean, I think that's one of the first rules when you get into becoming an internet marketer, because there's so many different tools and systems and automations, and it's impossible to know everything, right? And the biggest thing is, just like you said, how do you build the relationships with the people who already have audiences? And that takes a whole,
and that's the thing, right?
Itself.
I think a lot of people listening to this, I think it's how do you reframe stuff into a long-term mindset, right? Being very urgent in the short term, but like just looking at things out there with a 5 to 10 year timeline, it just becomes way easier that way.
Right, man, I love it. Last question I have for you, man, is there somebody out there that's struggling still? They love your journey, they are inspired by you, and they want to be able to blaze a path just similar to what you've done, but they have that little voice in their head, and we've all had it. It says that they're not strong enough, they're not smart enough, or maybe they just don't have enough resources. What's the one thing that you would say to that person to get them to just take action?
Yeah, I mean, I might have two things here. I think I have a different way of looking at it, because again, it's a lot of things you think about. It's really how you think and how you reframe things, right? So I think mental pain is a great thing. So this comes from probably my Asian, like my tiger mom, beating me down mentally all the time, right? I think in order to get to the next level, right, maybe you're at ground zero right now. If you want to get to the next level, you're going to have to go through a certain amount of pain and adversity to get there. And you have to this is how people keep leveling up. You keep getting stronger and stronger by going through pain at each level. And one of my favorite quotes is from Winston Churchill. It's, if you're going through hell, keep going, right? That means you're probably doing the right thing. Also be smart. I mean, obviously you don't want to be running through like fire or stuff, right? Unless you're like a Tony Robbins event. who knows? But I think that's what I would say.
Cool, man. I love it. For anybody who wants to stay connected with you, we're going to make sure that we put links in the show notes to everything that you mentioned today, especially your book. But for anybody that wants to stay connected with you, where can they find you at?
Yeah, so they can find me at Eric OSIU on Instagram or Twitter. I'm actually more active on Twitter now. And if you want to go learn more about the book, we got a lot of bonuses and stuff there. You should just go to levelingup.com for that.
Love it. I love it. Well, remember, just as he said, Dream Nation, if you're going through hell, just keep going, because at the end of the day, you have a dream. And if you don't take action on that dream, we all know it will only merely be a fantasy. That's all for this one. We'll catch you on the next one. That's all we got for this episode. Thank you for sticking around. That truly means a lot to me, and hopefully that means that we delivered massive value on this one. If you haven't already, the way that you could say thank you to myself and the team is just by heading over to iTunes and leaving a review and a rating. That's what iTunes loves to see. That's how we get out there even more. And I would definitely be grateful for it. I know the team would as well. Do me a favor and head on over to DreamNationPodcast.com. That's where you're going to be able to find all of the resources that we talked about in today's episode, as well as more exclusive content. And you'll also be able to sign up to our email list where we have more exclusive content. And we always love to hear the feedback from you all, because you're our tribe. So remember, in the dream we trust, we'll see you on the flip side.